A 2020 study by the Ministry of Social and Family Development found that children whose parents had committed drug offenses were 5 times more likely than other children to unfortunately come into contact with the criminal justice system in the future. But these facts and images are usually missing from the speeches, posts of those who campaign against the death penalty. Instead, there are baseless allegations, one-sided claims, and half-truths. These baseless allegations are also made in relation to prisoners awaiting capital punishment. I'll call them PACPs. They cast doubt on the process, the legal process. They cast doubt on the convictions and the sentences. For instance, in May 2023, last year, POFMA directions were issued against 10 social media posts and 2 online articles for containing false statements about capital sentence meted out by the courts. 5 parties, TJC, Online Citizen Asia, Andrew Lowe, Kirsten Hahn, M. Ravi, continued to make false statements alleging that a PACP was denied an interpreter during the recording of his statement. This, despite the court's clear statement to the contrary, a blatant false attack on the criminal justice system. Some of these activists have helped to file unmeritorious legal applications on behalf of convicted drug traffickers.
There is a very high risk that this conviction and sentence is unsafe, which really heightens the chances that an innocent person can be executed by the state in a few days. Just to add on a few other things that were particularly alarming in Tangaraju's case, he was not provided with a Tamil interpreter during his investigations, despite repeatedly asking for one. He said in court that he did not understand parts of the statement that were read back to him and that he was made to sign. In addition to this, I think a lot of, to those of us who work with people who are incarcerated and on death row, it's quite normal for us to register that actually none of them had lawyers at the point of being investigated. But I think to many members of the public, this is actually a big shock because we assume that people have access to lawyers when they're being questioned by the police. So all his statements, and this is especially alarming in a capital case, and the stakes are so high, you are facing death and you're being interrogated without the presence of a lawyer to advise you on your rights. Many people who are, even who are very well educated, whose English is their first language, know their legal rights, find police investigations extremely intimidating. And so just imagine the power differential between someone in Tangaraju's position facing a capital charge, being interrogated for hours on end, repeatedly, having his statements taken, recorded, and signed without any lawyer to advise him of his rights. And these are the statements based on which the prosecution builds their case. And the prosecution is allowed to bring this evidence before the court and use it to secure a conviction. Like just across the border in Malaysia, if the police interview an accused person and take their statement without the presence of a lawyer, the defense is allowed to use that statement, but the prosecution is not allowed to. Right? The prosecution is not allowed to secure someone's conviction on the basis of statements taken without a lawyer. So there are huge questions about access to justice here, even on an everyday basis, and all of this becomes even more devastating in a death penalty case. Yeah. And the other thing that Rocky highlighted is also that Tangaraju was convicted for the amount of over 1,000 grams of cannabis when the person who was caught with the drugs was convicted only of 499 grams. From the position of the families, all of this feels really arbitrary, right? You just think about it as a lay person. Someone is caught with a bundle of drugs. This person gets a different charge, a different sentence that is so much lower, and then their loved one is sentenced to death. So And this is what prosecutorial discretion looks like from the perspective of ordinary people. It looks like arbitrariness. And it's arbitrariness based on which life and death are decided. Now we'll have some comments from Subha and Leela. Subha is Tangaraju's niece. She's the daughter of Leela, who is his older sister. And so I'll be asking them some questions in Tamil, just to support them with the statements that they want to make, and then I will translate it into English as well. Subha, எதுக்கு உங்க மாமாக்கு வந்து ஸ்டே ஆர்டர் கொடுக்கணுங்கிறது நீங்க முக்கியம் நினைக்கிறீங்க?
கேஸ் வந்து அவங்க கேஸ் வந்து அவங்க ஒழுங்காக அனலைஸ் பண்ணலை ப்ராப்பர் லாயர். ஸோ நான் எப்படி பார்த்தாலும் அந்த ஃபோன் ரெக்கார்ட் கேட்டாங்க. ஸோ சில பாயிண்ட்ஸ் கொடுத்தப்ப தே நெவர் ஃபைட் ஸ்டூடெண்ட். ஸோ வேறு விஷயம் ஃபோன் நம்பரை வச்சு மட்டும் வந்து சார்ஜ் பண்ணுறது இட்ஸ் அன்ஃபேர்.
So it's unfair to charge him just based on the fact that they say the phone number belonged to him. There was a lot of points that the family raised and Tangaraju raised that was never brought before the court. He also asked to see the witness statements and other evidence like call registries and recordings, and none of that was produced to him, even though the prosecution had them in their possession.
Let us see that. So the judge was asking why we did not speak all these files. Right. So, but we wasn't given a chance to lay out all our evidence during that time. So you know what? They are not allowing us to actually try.
So I think what Subha is referring to is that the appeal lawyer raised a lot of the points that were not brought up in the trial. Yeah? And when the appeal lawyer raised these issues, the court did not say that these are not valid issues. They just said this should have been brought up at an earlier stage. So you see how unjust it feels to the family that these are valid concerns, valid challenges, but just because the trial lawyer failed to raise it, the court refused to hear it on appeal and consider it fairly. So, and the same happened when they appealed for clemency. Right? The family just has repeatedly been told this should have been brought up earlier. They have not been told this is not valid, this is not important, this is not a relevant point. Just you didn't bring it up earlier. So the family's in this predicament where he's facing death because something wasn't brought up at an earlier point, rather than because there's no substance there.
So I also because he really believes that the height, weight, the skin color, everything does not match our girl. He really said that he doesn't know our girl, and yet why is he still charged?
Yeah. So I think you've heard that Morgan's testimony was something that was quite significant in the case, and he said that he had never seen Tangaraju, he did not know how he looked, and the person that he was asked to deliver to, the way he described this person does not match the way that Tangaraju looks at all in terms of height, weight, skin color, etc.
So that's the reason why we just want to get a stay order to analyze this case again for each trial.
So the family would like is urging the court to get a retrial, and for that they need a state execution.
Because every order that we met with, everyone just like say that they are unable to take over this case. All are afraid, thinking that because they might lose trial. There's a lot of points that actually they can fight. My mom like went up and down, every week to just fight for a lawyer. So I don't know why lawyers are not helping. After my uncle get the death sentence are like in the letter, then only they want to call and ask to be lawyer. So all this one went okay. Why now then they want to come forward? All this one we wanted help, all they come and help us. So that's the reason why now we want a proper and good lawyer who can fight for this. And hope nothing will happen. Because he will not do anything. All just blame for what happened.
Things that he wanted to raise and we wanted to raise before the court that never got its day in court. He never had that fair hearing. If they relook at all of it to our satisfaction, really let him make his case, consider all the evidence and hear out all our points, and then they give him the same sentence, we'll accept it. At this point, we just don't feel he's had a fair trial. So after the first appeal that every accused person is entitled to in court, for capital, in his case, he wanted to bring another application about all these issues in his case, which he brought in December last year. And that case was dismissed in February this year. Now, what Leela is raising is that the family hunted for a lot of lawyers and tried to get him legal representation for this application. And this application is often a death row prisoner's last chance. Yeah, it's called the 394H application. And there are rules that you can only bring it one time, as in you're only entitled to it once. And after that, the court is not obliged to consider further such applications. Now, it's really distressing to Leela and her family that he was not given a lawyer for this application. And that she feels that if the accused person, the prisoner is not able to find a lawyer, the government should give them one. Because legally, you are allowed and you have a right to bring such an application. Why don't you have a right to a lawyer to represent you for such an application? So in the end, Tangaraju had to represent himself, and he had to do all the paperwork himself and file this himself, and it was dismissed summarily, which means it wasn't given a hearing per se, and it was dismissed. And so now he has used up that one chance without a lawyer, and that this is not fair. He should be entitled to have any appeal or challenge he wants to bring heard with the presence of a lawyer who represents him. Leela also wants to raise that they had previously approached a lawyer who told the family to wait 3 years because he was busy with other cases, and he committed that after that he would file this appeal for Tangaraju. So she just wants the people to know that he didn't file this appeal just at the last minute because there was no case before. It's just that the family was waiting for up to 3 years for this lawyer to fulfill his commitment, which he was eventually unable to, and so Tangaraju decided that he had no choice but to go ahead and do it on his own.